Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Danielle. I don't know if you can see me talking or not, if it's all of them. There might be an easier way to see just the big screen of who's going to be talking, but I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our first virtual mixology class. We are super excited to have Austin Ponton with us from Mount Gay Rum. And he's going to teach us a lot of great cocktails tonight and some history about the rum as well. So we're pretty excited to start with that. Just quickly before we start, a few things. I have you all on mute right now just because there's so many of you that I don't want a lot of background noise and everything, so that this will make it easier so that when Austin is talking, everybody can hear him. And then if you also want to turn on your cameras, you don't have to, but if you want to, it just makes it easier for us to talk to people and we can see everybody's faces and it's a little more interactive. And then we have, let's see, we want to thank Davidson's Beer, Wine, and Spirits for being one of our sponsors. We really appreciate them, always their constant support with us. I know all of you aren't local to Highlands Ranch, or some people I know aren't even in the state, but they are a great partner for us, and we really appreciate all of their support that they've given us, especially as we are going virtual and not being able to do the in-person events anymore. So, and then finally, a lot of you, I recognize a lot of your guys' names, so I know some of you guys have been to some of our in-person spirit tastings, and you know that all of our spirit tastings, the profits from the scholarship fund. Fortunately, with the cancellations, we don't really have all of that money going to scholarship anymore. So we put together a virtual tip jar. No pressure, you don't have to donate to it, but if you would like to, I'll put the link in the chat, and it's a virtual tip jar that goes to the Highlands Ranch seniors that are going to the next level of school, going to college. So it's great to support them in any way we can, but also no pressure. So thank you so much for being here again, and we will get
Hey everyone, here we go. Always going to have a few kinks as we get to work this out here. My name is Austin. I am with Mount Gay. Again, like Danielle said, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to be doing a couple cocktails and learning a little bit about Mount Gay Rum today. So as questions and everything pop up, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. And hopefully I'll have answers. And if I don't have answers, I'll let you know. We're going to start off, we're going to make the cocktail so that you guys have something to enjoy while you learn something if you so desire. So does everybody have all of their ingredients together for the rum punch? So it should be Mount Gay Black Barrel, Cointreau, lime juice, simple syrup, and some Angostura bitters. Once we get all that here, we will go ahead and start it off. So first things first, you're going to need your cocktail shaker. Something that looks like this. Sometimes you can have a Boston shaker. Sometimes it can be a little two-piece like this. You're going to need your cocktail shaker. It's going to look like this. Or it can be a Boston shaker, which is one with a pint glass. All will work just fine. First thing we're going to do is we're going to measure out 2.5 ounces of our Mount Gay Black Barrel. And we're just going to put that right into the shaker. Give everybody a second to do that.
I tilted it right.
Next, we're going to do 1 ounce of Cointreau, orange liqueur. And again, put that right into your shaker. Next, we're going to need our 1 ounce of lime juice. I had mine pre-squeezed here, so we're just going to dump her in. Fresh squeeze for cocktails is always better. Try to avoid getting those little lime-looking plastic shaker things. And add that right in as well. Next, we're going to do a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. This is literally just a 1-to-1 sugar and water. Add that right in as well. Then we're going to grab our bitters, our Angostura bitters. We're going to add 2 to 4 dashes of that into the cocktail shaker. Then grab a little bit of ice and add it to your shaker. Put your lid on, nice and secure. We don't want any accidents. And give it a good shake. And in the chat, if you need any of the ounces, any of that, Danielle went ahead and dropped the recipe in the chat there for you as well. So you should be good to go. Then you're going to want to take your pint glass, fill it to the brim with ice, and strain your cocktail into the glass. Should fill it up right up to the brim. There you go. And again, as we go on, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and drop them in the chat and we will try to get to them. When everybody's got theirs up, we can go ahead and have a little cheers as we start off our Friday night in quarantine together. To a good Friday night, learning about rum. So we're just going to shoot out a quick poll here before we get started. This is just to kind of see who all was able to actually get the items needed for the cocktail. And if you weren't, that's not a big deal. It's just more of a out of curiosity for ourselves here, if it'll work. And this is also kind of a little tester for me, as I've never done this on Zoom before. I don't know if that went out, but hopefully here we go. And if you had it, that's fine. You go ahead and slap a yes on there as well too. And thank you for getting beforehand. And yes, I see Amanda on there. These will sneak up on you. So this is about 2.5 drinks all in one. So take your time, enjoy it. Nobody's driving anywhere. And this is the best part about doing these things virtually is we don't really have to worry about if you you can enjoy yourself and you don't got to worry about how you're getting home because you're already home. Oh no, Chad, that's sad. But that'll work as a rum. You're good to go. All right, now let's see if I can do this and get you right back into it. So we are talking about Mount Gay. Mount Gay Virtual Masterclass. So Mount Gay is from the island of Barbados. That is a little Caribbean island. It's a little different than the other Caribbean islands. This is actually a coral island. So most of the islands, or all of the other islands in the Caribbean, are volcanic islands, which means that they were actually rose up from the ocean due to volcanic eruptions. Barbados is not that way. Due to that, Barbados is a very unique place to live, grow, farm, anything, because they don't have any standing water, for one. All their water goes all the way down into the ground. So back in the 1500s, the Portuguese were actually the first to discover Barbados. They gave it its name, Barbados, for the bearded fig trees on the island. It actually means bearded one. And then they left because they couldn't find any water standing on the, no lakes, no rivers, no anything. And they said, well, this isn't of any use to us. So they turned around and left. Then the English came around about 100 years later and found out that it was actually a really good place to grow sugarcane, which the English really love their tea. So that is pretty essential for them. So that is kind of where Barbados got its start as a real island. They were making a lot of sugar, and a byproduct of the actual creation of sugar is molasses, which is originally it used to be dumped into ditches on the island and just left as absolute waste. They didn't know what to do with it. Through random chance, there happened to be wild yeast that flies around in the air up there in Barbados, and it actually fermented the molasses in the ditches. And slaves and beggars would actually drink the fermented molasses and get drunk. So that's when somebody got smart and figured out, well, if we run this through a copper pot still, we can actually refine it a little bit and make something out of it. Therein, the birthplace of rum. So the first time rum was actually written down and mentioned was 1650. This is the island of Barbados. You get to see that there is a wild Atlantic facing side, and then there is a very calm turquoise Caribbean facing side of the island. It gives you two very, very different climates. And there's no sound, so don't feel like they're like you can't hear anything. Just a little view of, and what you see right there is actually a rum shop. So therein lies the inspiration for this drink right here. Rum is such an integral part of the culture and lifestyle in Barbados that their liquor stores are actually called rum shops. Each rum shop is pretty much based out of somebody's house that they have set up, and each one makes their own rum punch. So each individual place that you go, you will get a different style of rum punch. It's however the owner of the shop wants to make their rum punch today. So that's what you get. So on every bottle of Mount Gay, we see this 1703. That is actually the year that we started making rum officially, legally, which means we're about 317 years old today, or this year. We actually have a deed that shows us making rum all the way back in 1654. So 4 years after the first time rum was written down, we were there making rum. This gentleman right here is where Mount Gay gets its name, Sir John Gay Rum. He was actually a employee of the distillery that was owned by a family called or an individual called Sir Sober. I can't make that up. Sober is a very common surname out in Barbados. So they weren't very good at making rum. Go figure. And Sir John Gay Rum was. So they gave him everyday rights to manage and run the distillery. He pioneered doing double distillation, or redistillation as they called it back in the day, of copper pot rum. Made it for a smoother, more drinkable rum. And that's what allowed Mount Gay to survive for 300 plus years, is that double distillation and just being a superior product. In the 1800s, Sir John Gay Rum died in 1801, and in the 1800s they renamed the distillery after him. Now, they would have named it Mount Alein. However, there was already a Mount Alein on the island at the time, so they went with Mount Gay. So now you know where the name comes from. Mount is actually due to the fact that they are on a mountain in Barbados. And I say mountain like that because out here in Colorado, we know what real mountains are. But this being a coral island, we are anything that's over 50 meters tall, they consider a mountain. So that's where we get Mount and Gay. Before we renamed it, we were actually called Mount Gilboa for something like 100 plus years. And here is Mount Gay today. This is all of our facility and all of our sugarcane fields that you're seeing. We actually do practice crop rotation, so it's not always sugarcane that we're growing there, but we do sweet potatoes and other broadleaf plants to help reintroduce nutrients back into the soil. It's all a very holistic way of looking at how to treat the land. This is all of our rack houses. We have 4 different rack houses where we're storing something like 50 to 60,000 barrels of rum. Angel share, for anybody who's not familiar, is actually the amount of evaporation that happens year over year of alcohol. Monks were the first ones to really start distilling alcohol and aging it. And they would notice each year when they would go down to test the different barrels, their liquid that they were aging, a little bit more and a little bit more each year would evaporate and disappear. So they thought that that was the angels coming down and taking their share. Therein we get the name angel share. For most places like Scotland and Cognac, you're looking at about 2% year over year of evaporation. For Barbados specifically, we're looking anywhere from 8 to 12% evaporation, which means that we have a lot more activity and it ages quite a bit quicker than you're going to see, or it matures quite a bit quicker than in places like Scotland or Cognac, which is why you'll see a lot of Scotch is 10 plus years old, but you won't see a whole lot of rum that's 10 plus years old because you're going to lose most of that rum to evaporation. 100% of Mount Gay rum is made in Barbados. We like to keep to our roots. We've never made it anywhere else. We don't intend to make it anywhere else. We source all of our molasses for Mount Gay from the Caribbean. Most of it comes from Barbados. However, Barbados is not large enough to provide us with all of the molasses that we need. So we do source from other islands in the Caribbean, but we do not go outside of the Caribbean. It's all a very French way of thinking of terroir, and Mount Gay has definitely brought that under their wings here. This is our new master distiller. So this is actually she is the first female distiller, master blender in Mount Gay's history. So over 300 years, this is the first female master blender that we've had. Her name is Trudy Ann Branker. She was a trained biochemist at the university there on Barbados, and she worked under our previous master distiller, Alan Smith, for 5 years, learning everything that she could from him. And then she got the reins to the kingdom herself, and we're letting her take off. And we actually have a short video here to show from Trudy Ann, so hopefully everybody can hear it.
Hi, I'm Trudy Ann Branker, and for those of you
Maybe.
who don't know me, in April of 2019, I became the new master blender for Mount Gay. Being Barbadian is truly an honor to be able to carry on 300 plus years of heritage and craft that is Mount Gay, and put my stance on the future of Mount Gay. Mount Gay has the longest heritage in making rum. Skill, expertise, and knowledge of myself and my team has been passed on from master blender to master blender, and I'm sure through this exchange in craft, we'll be able to enrich the traditions and heritage of Mount Gay. Here at Mount Gay, given our diverse skills and the quantity and quality of barrels in our bond, the toolbox has become extensive, with which I have to create new blends and innovations. Can't wait to share with you all. I'm looking forward to seeing you all here in Barbados at the distillery or in your markets, and I'm counting on you to establish Mount Gay in the league of high-end spirits.
All right. So I'm gonna stop sharing here because I'm thinking people are probably working their way through. Okay, I see you may cover this later, but are there variations of rum based on the aging process similar to tequila? So rum, that's a good question. So rum is the wild, wild west when it comes to spirits regulations. So when you come from, say, Scotch or cognac, which are two of the most heavily regulated spirits categories out there, to be able to put Scotch or cognac on your bottle, you have to follow a very strict set of rules. Scotch in particular, the youngest spirit in the bottle is the age that you can put on there. So if you have a 50-year-old Scotch and you have a drop of 49-year-old liquid in there, you cannot call that a 50-year-old Scotch. That is a 49-year-old Scotch. Rum does not have those regulations. It is very much just shoot from the hip, do whatever you got to do. We do have an XO or an extra old, but again, that's kind of anywhere and everywhere for XO and cognac. That's got to be 10 years old. That's not the case with rum. You can put XO on a 2-year-old rum and slap it out on the market, and nobody's really going to regulate that. So that's more of a honor system and maybe a little bit of research into each individual product that you're pulling off the shelf. Just because it's got an age on it doesn't mean that it wasn't a drop of that age in that entire bottle. So how's that all drink? Let me see thumbs up. Are we ready for the next one? All right. Well, we will work our way right on to the next one here. Maybe. Hi, froze. All right. Sorry, I'm freezing a little bit. So the next one that we are going to do is a daiquiri. So this is one of there's an argument to be made that there's 6 original cocktails out there, and everything else that is made is a derivative of one of those 6. Well, the daiquiri is one of those 6 cocktails. What you'll notice with the original basic cocktails is that they are very basic. This is what I call a 3-touch cocktail. You don't need much, just need the 3 things, which are going to be Mount Gay Black Barrel, your simple syrup, and lime juice. Here it is. So what we're going to go ahead and we're going to start off with is 2 ounces of our Mount Gay Black Barrel, or your rum that you got with you there. And we're going to put that straight into the shaker. The important thing with cocktails is always balance. Some of us, all of us know that person that likes to do 1 little, 2 little, 12 counts, you know. If you do it by the recipe, that's as it was meant to be, that's where you're going to get the most balanced, flavorful cocktail out of it. We're going to do an ounce of lime juice next. Maybe. And if you don't have a jigger like this, an ounce of lime juice is about a full lime squeezed. And then last, we're going to do 1 ounce of simple syrup. Right in there. And then you're going to want to add ice to your shaker. Once you add ice, go ahead and put the cap on there and get ready to shake her up again. I recommend this being served in a martini glass or a coupe, whatever you got at home. If you've only got a rocks glass, that works fine too. It doesn't need to be in anything as big as the pint glass for this one. And then shake it up. Once you got it all nicely shaken up, you can strain her right into your glass. And you're already on to your second cocktail of the night. Time flies when you're drinking with Austin. So while we're enjoying this new cocktail, or any other questions popped up, anything else burning a hole in you, you just really got to get an answer for it? All right, well, when everybody's got it all strained out, let's do another cheers and we'll keep going then. Oh, good question, Mimi. So this is going to have that tart flavor to it. So it can really go a lot of ways. A lot of people like martinis with tacos, actually, and anything that you would normally enjoy a margarita with, you could enjoy a daiquiri with. Cheers, everyone.
If everybody cheers and smiles, can we take a big group photo for everybody together? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thoughts on that one? Thumbs up? No thumbs down, right? Just all thumbs up. I love it. All right. Well, we got just a little bit left here. Just a little bit more about rum. And we'll jump right back into it as everybody's continuing to enjoy. So, rum by definition, as somebody had just asked right at almost the perfect time, this was almost serendipitous. This is an alcoholic liquor or spirit distilled from molasses or some other fermented sugarcane product. We only do our rum with molasses. Some people out there like to use beet juice. That's not something I'm gonna personally make some rum out of myself, but there are some out there on the market. And different countries make different styles of rum. That's why when you taste Mount Gay versus a Jamaican rum tends to have a lot more funk to it. And that's kind of that, you know, I don't want to say off flavors, but they're a little different than what you expect. For Mount Gay, we do, okay, maybe. Everything, like I said, from molasses, and that's where it got its name Black Gold, is once they realized that it was no longer a byproduct and it was something that they could actually use and turn into something profitable. So for sugar plantations on Barbados, if you had a distillery and you were making rum, which almost every single one of them were back in the day, all of your facility costs could be covered just by the profits from making rum. So you took something that was originally trash, you didn't know what to do with it, and you turned it into something that paid all of your bills, which made then all of the sugar that you wanted to sell pure profit beyond that, which is not a bad trade-off. Something that we think is very, very important, and you will hear from most distilleries if you ever go on a distillery tour, is that where you get your water from matters. We use pure coral filtered water. Now, we are a coral island, which means that all of the water has to go through the island and be filtered by coral. We actually have a well house, which you're seeing right here. That is 300 years old. And the water that comes out of there is very, very pure, very clean. And that's why we have continued to use it. And it gives us our signature Mount Gay rum flavor. Here, what you're seeing is the actual inside of our fermentation area. So you're seeing these windows with coverings on them. They're actually slatted windows. There's no glass or anything to stop that. We do open fermentation. You're seeing some fermentation a little bit right there, that bubbling. That's the actual process of turning sugars into alcohol. We add in yeast to do this, but we also leave the open fermentation for the natural wild yeast there in Barbados to have its factor in its play as well. You will get certain unique specific flavors from the yeast as well, which is why every Mount Gay that we put out has a certain flavor profile to it. We do combination of copper pot and column still rums. All of our rums we put out are a combination of both of those. So what you're seeing here are our stills. We have a couple of different style pot stills. That right there is our coffee still, one of few in the world that are actually working. It was actually sitting out in the yard for a very long time out at Barbados until we could find somebody that actually knew enough about them to help us refinish it and rework it to actually get it working again. All of these different stills are going to give you different flavored distillates. We age each spirit that runs off of a still separately in separate barrels. And then when it comes to the time for them to be blended, that's where Trudy Ann really lets her magic show. That she can take all of these different years and different styles of still created distillate and blend them together and create the product that you've got in front of you today. We like to say we do 100% tropical static aging. So the tropical comes back to our angel share, where we're getting 8 to 12% versus 2% of evaporation. And our static aging means that all of the barrels that run off of a still, all of the single run of that still, all of that goes into several different barrels. As those barrels evaporate, we actually end up taking all of the barrels from that single run and we consolidate them together. So it's all the same liquid. They've all sat next to each other on the warehouse. We're just combining them in the same barrel so that they have more contact on the actual wood, which is where you get your flavor from when you're aging. So if anybody's heard of the Solera method, that is actually adding younger spirit to older spirit in a continual process. We don't do that. Everything we do is all the same age, all brought together, which produces our very rich and flavorful rums. You'll see Trudy Ann here in her lab as she's actually doing the blending process. It's a very it surprised me the first time I watched this happen. She had a very scientific approach to it, where she brought in 25 different samples and tasted each one and wrote down tasting notes for each individual one. And then she knew, based on what tasting notes, how to combine and at what amounts. And there's still some, trial and error on in there. But once she found the right blend, she would have it all notated out, and then she would send that blend out, that recipe out, to the warehouses, and they would take all of the barrels and they would blend them all together as Trudy Ann told them to. and that signature style that we alluded to with the water. So there's always 4 flavors that you ought to be able to detect within each Mount Gay. Now, as you go up in the ages of Mount Gay, you still get to taste these, but some are more flavorful in different ways than others. But there ought to be fresh vanilla, almond, ripe banana, and dark chocolate notes in all of the Mount Gays that you try. So if you're curious about the remaining line, I know a lot of you guys got Black Barrel for today, and thank you. But if you are curious, we have a couple other out there. And this is just kind of our fun, simple graphic that I like to show here. So our Mount Gay Eclipse, this was one of our, this is our flagship. The red cap is very iconic. This is huge within the sailing community. I know we don't have a whole lot of sailors out here in Colorado, but this was the sailor's rum for years and years and years and years. I believe it's the same recipe for 100 years. We age this in ex-American whiskey barrels. We're not allowed to say where we get the whiskey barrels, but it's American whiskey. The next step up is the Black Barrel that you have there. So what makes Black Barrel a little bit different is, yes, we are aging in American whiskey, but we are also doing a 6-month finishing period in ex-bourbon casks with a level 4 char. So when they actually toast the inside of a barrel, there's different levels of char that they can do. The deepest level char that you can get on the inside of a barrel is a level 4 char, or otherwise noted as an alligator char. Because when you look in the barrel, the staves of the barrel are all kind of bubbled up and kind of look like the skin of an alligator. So that's where that came in as well. And then for our XO, all of these are aged a little bit more. Our XO is somewhere around 8 to, I think, 15 years. And it is a combination of American whiskey, bourbon barrels, and actually cognac barrels as well. So these Black Barrel and XO were actually reformulated by True Deanne when she got brought in about a year ago now, I think. And if you have an older bottle, I'm sure the newer bottles are coming to your market very soon. And if you're so lucky to have a newer bottle, very rarely do you take something as fantastic as the original version and make it better. And True Deanne has hands down taken both Black Barrel and XO and made them significantly and markedly better. And I got a tip of the hat to her on that one. These are fantastic rums. And if you get the chance, I would definitely recommend checking them out. So I know I had some things come through here. Thanks, Austin. You're welcome. It did not take me very long to grow the mustache. Nope, just a couple weeks. Just comes in great. So that's actually a good question, Willie. What drinks would we use the Mount Gay XO for? So the XO is going to have some really heavy bourbon notes to it. So the way I really like to use XO is in an old fashioned. Just do the same amounts that you would do for a regular old fashioned with whiskey. Just switch out the whiskey for the Mount Gay XO. I tend to do 2 ounces of Mount Gay XO, about a half an ounce of simple syrup. If you can do like a Demerara simple syrup, which is just like a brown sugar, a little less refined sugar simple syrup, you're going to get a little bit more deeper flavor from that simple syrup. And then if you really want to get crazy, you can try some chocolate bitters, or actually I like to do orange bitters in that, and it really kind of flows it around. It changes it up a little bit, and it makes a fantastic old fashioned, or drink it neat. Michelle, I would have to get back to you on where you can find that in Arkansas. I'll have to call the rep out there, and we'll get you an answer. I did make my simple syrup, Spencer. So this is actually a Demerara simple syrup. Just something you can get it at Walmart or wherever you do your grocery shopping, and there is usually it's like I said, it's a little less refined sugar, so it gives you a little bit kind of like brown sugar. Doesn't taste like white sugar, table sugar, that's where your differences are going to really kind of come in, is that sweetness level. And still do it as a 1-to-1. Yes, bitters and simple sugars are used in a lot of drinks. So simple sugar is one of the main things that you need to really make a cocktail. Very few cocktails out there don't have some sort of sweeteners to them. And if they don't have a sweetener, usually they're using something like a sweet vermouth, which is a little sweeter to begin with.
Austin, there's a question asking if you're paying for the name or if it's truly a difference with the different prices of rum. Can you kind of explain that?
There's always going to be brands that are going to charge more, whether they've been around longer or whether they came into the market and they said, here's what our cost is and here's the profit margin that we'd like to make on that. Most spirits aren't going to slap a high price tag on something that is a very cheaply made product, because they know they'd probably only sell one of those maybe, and then everybody would go and tell all their friends that they spent a whole bunch of money on a bottle and that it wasn't worth it. So usually if the prices go up, there is a correlation of whether or not it took longer to age, whether the product that they actually have to start with is more expensive. The reason why Scotch is more expensive than bourbon, which is mostly corn, isn't because it comes from overseas. It's because barley is 7 times more expensive to start with than corn is. So that product alone is already going to be more expensive just because the initial pieces that you had to buy to make it are going to be more expensive. So usually there is a correlation with, if you spend a little bit more money on your product, you're getting a little bit better product. Now, that being said, there are products that are better for cocktails, and there are products that are better for drinking neat, which is just pour it into a glass and drink it. And that's usually your individuals at the liquor store are educated enough to kind of point you in the right direction. I would never recommend making an old fashioned with a $200 bottle of Scotch, but you know, maybe that's your thing.
Another question that kind of got missed way up was, why black barrel for this recipe versus Eclipse?
So therein is a little bit different there too. So that kind of falls in with the last answer, that some products are made for cocktails and some are made for, I don't want to say shots, but maybe mixing with a Coke. Mount Gay Black Barrel has that little bit extra bolder flavor to it, that when you mix it in a cocktail, the flavors will actually tend to persist a little better. When you use something like Eclipse, it will do well in cocktails. It actually does really well in a rum punch, but it doesn't hold up quite as well in a daiquiri. It's the bolder flavors typically of the Black Barrel is what makes me lean towards that when I'm making almost any cocktail with rum. Any other questions I missed? Did everybody finish both cocktails? All right. Chad's like, big thumbs up right away. I love it. I do use ice in the shaker, Amanda. I add the spirits first, and then I add ice to it, because if you take a little bit longer to add the spirits to the shaker when there's already ice in there, it can dilute a little bit more than you want it to. And then why we serve this up versus on a rock. Okay, that's a good question. Thank you, Chad. So certain cocktails are served on the rocks or on ice, and certain cocktails are served up like this. Basically, the biggest difference is we've diluted this to the point that we don't want to dilute it anymore. With the rum punch, the reason why we serve that on ice is because it gets a little easier to drink the more you let it kind of dilute. And that's because if you really wanted to shake it long enough, you could probably serve that one up. But typically it's better if you let that one dilute a little bit more. So it's really just a matter of whether or not you diluted it enough to begin with, and that's just I guess that could be a personal choice. Drinks you should shake and drinks you should stir. There's a pretty basic rule of thumb. Some don't follow this, some do. But basically, if you have some sort of juice, lime juice, lemon juice, orange juice, anything like that, you should shake the cocktail. And if it's mostly spirit forward, so like an old fashioned or a Manhattan, you would stir those. And that's your basic rule of thumb. Again, there's some outliers, but that's a basic rule of thumb.
Does anybody have any last minute questions before we move on? Kind of wrap things up and say goodbye and everything?
All right. Well, I'm going to pass it over to Danny here. We've got one more thing that I know she wants to say as a little thank you. And we got this to show as well right there.
Perfect. There we go. So we just wanted to wrap things up and say thank you to everybody. Thank you so much to Austin for spending your time teaching everybody how to make all these cocktails, and thank you for all of the history too. I know that I enjoyed that. I hope you all enjoyed that just as much as I did. Also, huge thank you to Davidson's. And just a reminder, I saw in the chat there's a couple people that couldn't find it some places. I know not everybody is in like the surrounding areas of kind of Highlands Ranch area, but anyone that is local, Davidson's does have it, and they have a 10% off coupon. So please go there and grab it if you couldn't find it, so you can recreate these cocktails. I mean, they're a great sponsor of ours, and we really appreciate them and all that they do for us. With that, we just have 3 more for the series. So we have next Friday. Please consider joining us for that. And it's basically every Friday through the end of May that we will have these. So if you enjoyed tonight, sign up, grab the ingredients for next week, and we hope to see you all again. We really appreciate you guys being here. That's all I got for you.
Absolutely. Just to reiterate, thank you guys again. And this is for once, I actually don't have to say get home safe. So I should say just get to your couch safe and click on some Netflix and have a good rest of the evening. And don't feel bad if you end up making 1 or 2 more of those cocktails. But have a good night, y'all.